So with that, I'd like to pass over to Zoe Webster, the AI director of BT Digital, who's going to lead this session. And I've been asking questions of all the moderators of the panels, and what is the one big life skill you picked up during COVID? And this morning we had whiskey drinking and sock knitting, and our Zoe has learned how to grow aubergine. And I think that's a pretty impressive skill set. I can barely keep a herb garden alive. So Zoe, well done on growing aubergine. And I'm passing it over to you.
Thank you very much, Bindi. Hello. This session gives us the opportunity to get an update from the winners of last year's Best COVID-19 Innovation Award from Haptik, C2AI and Builder.ai. We'll hear about some of their most important use cases and learnings from the past year. Doesn't it seem like such a long time? And we'll uncover some clues about what the future holds for the AI world more broadly in the coming years. So I'd like to introduce you to the panelists now. So we've got Aakrit Vaish, who's co-founder and CEO of Haptik, one of the world's largest conversational AI platforms. Aakrit's mission is to establish Haptik as the world's largest conversational AI company in the coming years. Aakrit has been identified as a Business World 40 Under 40 achiever for his work at Haptik, so very impressive. Next up, we've got Richard Jones, who's President and Chief Strategy Officer at C2AI. He has over 30 years of experience in advanced technology as an entrepreneur, having co-founded businesses across 4 continents that have delivered up to 300x returns on first round. Incredible. And finally, but no less impressively, we've got Sachin Duggal, who's the founder and CEO of Builder.ai, a leading AI-powered platform that empowers businesses to build software 6 times faster and 70% cheaper without needing to speak tech. A serial entrepreneur, Sachin started a cloud computing company, Nivio, when he was just 21 and still at university, taking it to just under $100 million in valuation before exiting, and he still holds a trademark for the word cloud in India. So welcome to all 3 panelists. Fantastic to have you here and to kind of share your learnings from the past year. So I'd like to ask you each in turn to kind of introduce a bit about your winning innovation. Tell us about it in brief, along with the largest use case that illustrates the innovation in action. So Aakrit, perhaps you can start.
Thanks so much for having me here and bringing us all back together. The last time I was at a large physical event was a CogX 2019. So I have very fond memories from about 2 years back, and happy to be back again over here in the virtual format. Zoe, to answer your question, the biggest innovation, I think for us, which is part of what also constituted the award that we got. And it's really now been, what started out as a side project, what started out as something that we thought we were going to run for a few weeks, has now become a multi-year initiative, which has been the official COVID-19 AI helpline that we've built for the country of India, working closely with the government of India. This AI helpline is essentially available on WhatsApp, which is, at least in India, by far the largest messaging platform, and more internet users use WhatsApp than even the browser, for that matter. So WhatsApp as a medium has this AI helpline, which is called the PMO's, which is Prime Minister Office Corona Help Desk. And like I said, it started out back when COVID first hit and lockdown first happened as a side project. But now it's become something that the citizens of the country look to as the place to go when they have questions about how the dynamics are changing on a regular basis. We just implemented additional capabilities to even be able to book vaccination slots now through the same helpline. So you can simply, on a WhatsApp interface through messaging, send a message and say, I want to book a vaccine slot, have it booked, go through the process, and even close the loop itself on the helpline. Over the year, now it's been about 15 months since it's been live. It's been implemented in multiple languages, but more than anything else, it's one of the largest AI helplines ever built of any type It's been used by over 40 million citizens, processed about 120 million interactions with the citizens. We've never seen scale like that for any of the work that we do. And I remember my co-founder and I were talking about just recently that as founders or builders, like Sachin would say, we talk about this idea of being able to create impact through the work we do or the companies we build. And at least for me personally, I couldn't have seen or witnessed anything else than what we've been able to accomplish with this helpline. And all of which, by the way, we don't get, it has very little to do with money because we don't get paid much for things like these, but it's just from an innovation perspective, putting AI to good use, bringing together, so many different aspects. It's been a rewarding experience, one that we've learned a lot from, and now, our technology is battle tested to handle scale of all varieties.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Great to hear, Aakrit. Richard, can you remind us about your innovation and talk about the biggest use case that you've been dealing with the past year?
Okay, thank you. It's lovely to be back. And I noticed that the recipient this year of the Innovation Award for COVID-19 is AstraZeneca for the vaccine. So it's fairly humbling when you look at the achievements that have been made by companies like that. Hospitals exist to save lives, make people better, not make them worse. Those are actually very difficult things to measure because during the pandemic, say, you have patients coming to hospital in extremis, they're very ill. You've got a variety of physiological issues they may have and other comorbidities, things which are wrong with them. We uniquely can risk assess an individual patient level across all of acute care, so that's maternity, surgery, and medical patients, and can identify what the outcomes should be, both for mortality, which is slightly easier to measure, but also in terms of complications. And in simple terms, we produce better patient outcomes while saving money for hospitals. The specific innovation is a prospective tool which enables you to risk assess patients for two conditions that keep you in hospital for an extra 8 days, one of which is present in 40% of patients, and essentially acute kidney injury will be killing 10% of people with COVID-19. We can halve that. And to put that into scale, that's 70,000 lives a year saved in the UK, 375,000 lives a year, and $12.5 billion of direct costs in the US. And in India, we did a study recently, we could pretty much save one person per bed per year just by avoiding those conditions. It's been a very interesting year because it's particularly challenging, and congratulations to Sachin for the work with the Indian government. It's particularly difficult during those times to get people's attention. And it's a bit like somebody's hair's on fire and you're trying to hand them a fire extinguisher and that they're just too busy running around, and it's been challenging in that regard. Where we're getting to now is that we're working on the elective surgical waiting list, which in the UK is going to peak somewhere near 10 million patients. Probably going to take about 5 years to resolve, and that requires us running 40% faster than we do at present in UK hospitals. To give you an idea about the impact of those delays, that's going to double mortality. It's going to add about 40% to the number of complications, and between 6 to 8% of the people who are on the list will end up as an emergency admission. So we're using our world's largest patient data set, 30 years of research, 12 years of development, to automate and adapt products which already exist, already in use globally, but in the NHS as well, to help surgeons triage the list. Outcomes of that, we're going to halve the mortality of those on the list, we're going to halve the complication rates, but we're also going to save a fairly stunning figure, which is 1,000 surgeon years of time that they will spend triaging the list, admin-wise. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's been a very interesting year.
Sounds like it. Wow. Thank you, Richard. And Sachin, can you do the same? Can you kind of remind us about your innovation that won the award, and tell us about the big use case that's happening this year?
No, I think look, it's always tough going after both Richard and Aakrit. I realized that the last time around. But I think for us, what's been really evident, and I think the pandemic has made this sort of front and center, is that we're living in a software first world. But as we think about small businesses, which make up so much of the economy, they're not technical. Most of our customers think Java is a coffee bean you order at Starbucks. not a programming language, which is why so much of sort of software development and software outsourcing, digital transformation has failed historically in the past. Software just needs way too much effort, too much money, too many people to build. And most of our customers do not want to do it themselves. They struggle to use PowerPoint. They're not going to drag and drop widgets on a screen. One of my favorite analogies is that if software was pizza, the world is craving Domino's, not to be told to go buy a pizza oven and do 10 bootcamp classes, especially when the need for critical digital infrastructure within a small business or a growing business is paramount now. Whether it's our smallest customers, and we launched the Studio Store sort of just when we were having this discussion a year ago, are going live with their digital starter kits, or it's larger businesses that are digitally transforming processes. We have seen, I guess, tailwinds to that extent. And what our platform does is it really removes the need to understand technology, removes that wastage of building the same feature 50 times. And our software assembly line allows anyone to be able to digitally transform. And we've really seen that tailwind through, just from a revenue perspective. And I know not necessarily the perfect gauge, but we've seen monthly net revenue go up 8x in the last 12 months. And we've also used that as a way to then drive how the platform can be adopted to our most vulnerable customers. So we actually very recently launched free apps for small businesses as they were coming out of the lockdown in the UK, now also in India as they're coming out of lockdown, where they don't have to pay anything. And so, when we think about the platform we've built, and we think about what the world was before, even if you went to Shopify and you wanted to get a native app, you would spend between $5,000 and $30,000, and you could spend 6 to 8 weeks customizing it. And here you get it for free and it ships in 30 minutes and it's a native experience. And I think you sort of mentioned, Zoe, around large cases. And for us, I guess there's 2 dimensions to that. One is large use case of platform is just the diversity of our customer base, from the little grocery store to the $9 billion grocery store, from the restaurant to the chain of restaurant, from the world's 3rd biggest car manufacturer to the car garages that are building mini marketplaces. I think 2 that really stand out for me. One is how we helped one of the largest armed forces in the world move off ration cards to digital ration cards in 4 weeks, and they built it on the platform. And then the second is how we helped a really large cash and carry, and they're doing about $1 million worth of transaction on something they built on a platform. And I'd say sort of going forward for us, because we haven't quite shipped it yet, but the 2 things that again really show the power of how software can transform just about everything in our modern day life is our return to work platform that we're giving away for free for companies to figure out things like staggered entry, working out who may potentially be sick. And then also the COVID passport that's being built on Builder that we're giving out to emerging markets, to any city, nation, country that may have the need for it to be able to have a vaccine passport, at least to allow sort of travel and business to come back together.
Gosh, so many opportunities from starting from this one point. I wanted to come back to the next question around, Richard, what you were saying about attention and getting people's attention. And Sachin, you mentioned that diversity of the use base. Have there been, what challenges have you had bringing in customers? Have there been particular verticals or geographies or, types of business that have been harder to grab the attention of than others? Perhaps Richard, you've got a comment there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say that the healthcare is particularly difficult, and the NHS at the moment has been very difficult, very challenged. And at those moments, in healthcare, you need to have a certain kind of pace of acceptance of new technology. You can't do it too quickly. I think Sachin's got something absolutely brilliant there for developing applications super fast, and that would have been incredibly useful built around data sets we had during the pandemic. But it's not business as usual. So we have at various times been able to get to secretaries of state, to very senior cabinet ministers, to chief medical officers of countries. And What's been most challenging then is the mechanism underneath them to actually exploit these. So you're referred to people who are absolutely snowed under work, or you're referred back to hospitals who are, middle of the pandemic, absolutely face down. So it's one of those moments when a command and control structure would have been fantastic to enable some of the changes we'd like to have made, but clearly is not the ideal for the NHS and other health systems. So it's again been a fairly interesting year in that regard. What's nice now is that we're getting an awful lot of attention from governments and from senior ministers, and what seemed like, if I look back 12 months, sleeping in this office about 2 meters away from where I am now to make sure I didn't get COVID because we had this thing which was going to save so many lives. It's taken much longer to get to that critical mass than we expected, but it was that groundwork which was still required.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds challenging. And Sachin, given that diversity of the use, but were there any patterns that you were seeing, any places that were more challenging than others to get their attention?
Yeah, so I guess if I took three different dimensions to answer the question, one is we obviously, like much of the world, saw February and March flatline, our entire top of the funnel as we came out of beta, just completely tanked, and we took all the right, I guess, decisions to increase runway, conserve cost, and then we saw exactly the opposite happen as soon as we went into sort of April and May, and we saw demand skyrocket. But it was a very different demand compared to what we've seen in the beta and the alpha that we'd done. We had people ordering software at midnight. We had people ordering software on a Saturday, on a Sunday. We had folks speaking in local dialect from 11 different countries. So for us, a lot of it was re-evaluating how we actually engaged. And we didn't see, it was really interestingly, we didn't actually see any negative in the funnel. We actually saw the funnel accelerate. So we went from median time to close, used to be 50 days. It became 13 days. For our smallest customers, it became 2 days. So we had the grappling issue of how to manage the demand and make sure sort of that we weren't also burning our teams out and also over-indexing on the platform too much. So I think that was interesting. The second, I guess, from a region perspective, what I was really blown away with was just, I guess, the velocity at which the Asian, sort of Southeast Asia and Middle Eastern markets picked up that the world was going to become digital first. It felt like it happened over a weekend. You sort of had folks a little fried trying to figure out what they were going to do, and then Monday morning came in and they're like, we need to build software, we're not going to be in business anymore otherwise. And to see, it was very inspiring to see folks that didn't really understand what they were doing, but they sort of they'd crossed the chasm, they'd made that leap of faith that they were not going to get run down by the pandemic. They were going to survive this, and realize that software was going to be their path forward was just very inspiring to see how they grappled with that unknown. And I think as we've seen markets now globally unlock, we've seen that trend again and again. And we can almost look at a market, look at the unlock, and see a very clear correlation between how, as we get closer to the unlock, businesses are thinking about how are they going to manage queuing, how are they going to manage click and collect, how are they going to manage a digital process.
Wow, thank you. And Aakrit, are you seeing any patterns? I mean, aside from kind of demographics, are you seeing any differences in adoption of what you're providing?
Yeah, I think echoing a little bit what both Sachin and Richard said. Look, I mean, in the business of AI and software, it's fairly evident that demand has never been higher. We used to, pre-pandemic, we used to have, when we used to think about verticals and segments of industries and customers that we work with, we used to say retail, then we used to say e-commerce, then we used to say fintech, then we used to say financial services. Now there's just e-commerce and fintech, right? There's every retailer is essentially an e-commerce company, and every financial services provider is basically a fintech using digital means to get their products out. So I think if you're in the business of providing and enabling software that either improves efficiency significantly or enables new streams of revenue, I think it's fairly evident that there is a lot of takers for good products like these. In my category or my industry, I think the digital wave or what the outcome of COVID accelerated adoption at least by 12 to 18 months. The growth that our industry is seeing today, conversational AI is seeing today, originally we had anticipated this would have been more like 2022, maybe even 23. But it's all significantly accelerated because of the overall need for businesses and enterprises to have digital solutions, to be able to service their customers, because the customers are all digital. So that's obviously a big wave. I mean, for all of us who've seen that sort of cycle of innovation where you go from innovators and early adopters to early majority to late majority.
Yeah.
I was smiling when Sachin said the weekend thing, because I remember in March, pre-pandemic, I presented to our company that how conversational AI is in the early adopters category. It's going to be, it'll take its own due time before it gets to early majority. And then a month later, the next company, all hands, are like, wait, we're already there. We've already moved from early adopters to early majority just in like 2 weeks. So yeah, I think those are some of the changes we've seen.
Wow, really changes in the journey through the adoption curve. I think everyone's seen that this year. Just for our next question, just to remind everyone, we're really keen to get your questions for the panelists on Hopin, so please send those in. But in the meantime, I think everyone's had some, pivot points or crucible points during this past year. Can you share with us, those perhaps most surprising points that you've had this year where you've really had to change your approach, rethink what you're doing, start something afresh? Be really helpful to get your insight there. So I know, it's been mentioned before, changing the way you engage with customers, examples like that, or perhaps the most surprising one. So Sachin, perhaps you've got some examples.
So look, as I'd mentioned earlier on, Zoe, for us, February was probably extremely scary. We had this one graph that we always sort of reflect back on, was the day or the 3 days where we did not realize what had happened at the top of the funnel, having just come out of beta, because we just could not see any traffic. Yeah. And we first thought it was an analytics issue, then we thought it was a data problem, and actually there were just no customers coming in, or very few. And so coming in from that, we had to make some of those difficult decisions. We cut OpEx by 50%. We cut marketing by 65%. We redirected all marketing from only having 15% be on growth, 100% on growth, because there were no more events. I remember having the first town hall I call it the first town hall of the pandemic, and saying, guys, we're going to have to do a lot more with a lot less. I remember some of the conversations that we were having before that town hall. And I mean, a year ago, we sat there and we said, look, we're going to have to make difficult decisions. There's nothing to say that we're not going to see tailwinds, but we don't want to be the guys that, and I don't want to be the CEO that says, hey, it's going to be all great, and then something doesn't pan out the way you expected. So we did an 11% reduction in headcount. We offsetted most of the potential reduction in OpEx cuts with reduction in comp. So our average comp reduction was around 35%. But we gave it to folks in options. And we said, look, we're going to restore comp. We think it's December when we will sort of be able to really see through this, but we've just got to deliver. And then the best case is these options you have, you'll be able to sell them, and you'll even get a premium. And so you could be sitting a year from now actually having made more than you gave up. And that's sort of the potential silver lining. And as I look at a year on, and I'd mentioned sort of, Studio Group, 8x in monthly net revenue, overall net revenues grew 4x sort of on monthly. And we delivered the promise of restoring comp in December. And we've had most of our teams now be able to benefit from those options and a premium. They've been able to sell their options with a premium. So they've made more than what they gave up. And I think that to me was the crucible point, because we had 2 or 3 points where we asked our teams and our customers to have faith. They gave us the faith, and touch wood, we were able to deliver against it. Because this pandemic otherwise had all the ingredients to become a train wreck for a young company. And I really believe it's the crucible moments that brought our organization and our team together. And I guess the one thing that I learned through this, well, 2 things: listen lots, and ultimately do what your gut tells you. It has this uncanny ability in wartime to be really precise.
I think that's a great lesson, and perhaps we don't listen to our gut enough in normal times. Richard, what about you? Have you had any during this past year? What have been your kind of crucible points?
I think the first one was recognizing that there was an initial almost a panic stage where people were looking for solutions, and at that point they were reaching out, and AI was kind of the answer. But actually, there were lots of immature solutions that people had, and it created a huge amount of noise. And ideally, at that point, I think helping governments wherever they were with actually filtering through everybody saying, "Oh, give us the data and we can do this," would have made a major difference. Over a period of time, that's clarified away. So now we've carried on winning awards throughout the year. We're one of 10 essential digital health, that is, for UK national COVID response. We're in the top 100 digital health companies in the UK in the 11 essential category. We're getting that recognition globally. The chasm that one of the panelists talks about before, that actually is almost a chasm of recognition. So I think at the start of the pandemic, we knew we were doing unique stuff. We knew we had fantastic references globally. We knew it was great. We had to do a couple of things, one of which was bang the drum louder than everybody else, which is why we're very grateful to CogX for the 2 wins that we had last year and being a finalist this year, because that really helps get people's attention. And the second thing then was actually looking at what you do and saying, in the long term, people are not going to optimize a hospital in the way that they had traditionally. What have we got which we can use in new ways? And we retooled some of the stuff that we did, such that, as I said, we're able now probably to triage the elective surgical list. And that 1,000 surgeon years of time, that's enough to do 10% of the list. Just to give you an idea of kind of, that's a million operations worth of time we're saving from the system. So I think it was those 2 things, one of which was really cutting your cloth to match the situation that you're in, and the second of which was somehow fighting through the noise and getting the recognition that you need for, if you look at what the fellow panelists are doing, that's amazing stuff, amazing growth, really making a difference, but also responding to the market. And probably it took us longer to do that than it did for them. Okay, thank you, Richard. Aakrit, what about you? Did you have any key points in the year that really kind of made a difference for you?
Many, but I think
which were most surprising to you?
Not surprising, but I think we were exchanging a few notes about this before our panel. For me, the most amount of time that I have spent in this past year that I probably was surprised by or didn't expect to have spent so much time was just on overall people, our team, mental health. I'm based in India. Everybody knows what happened over here in COVID wave 2. Supporting our teams, our families. I think there were a few weeks where I genuinely felt that business and anything to do with what we were doing for our customers was just so far down in terms of priority. Just making sure people are feeling okay, they are taken care of, we are there for them, we're there for their families. I've spent considerable amount of time, more than what I had originally anticipated or even imagined. I mean, we started talking about genuine mental health challenges because of the nature of remote work. I think, in January and February. And then as a company, we tried to do lots of things. And then when wave 2 came about, I think there was about 10 days where I think April 15 to 30th, there was pretty much no productivity or no work that happened. And honestly, I don't think anybody was thinking about it. Neither was I. I think survival took a different meaning, in our company, or for that matter, most companies around here. So I think, and even now, by the way, we're just about coming out of wave 2 here. Even now, most of our team, we're 256 people. Most people are wanting to come back to the office. Most people are, now fairly tired and to some degree frustrated also of just being at home. So that continues to remain our number one challenge as a company, is just how do we keep the motivation and morale to the same degree for a bunch of people who actually, found their energy by being in the office and being in physical workspaces. Also, do remember that, we do have a distributed team in various parts of the world, but a large part of the team is based in India, where, you don't necessarily have extremely large spaces and houses, particularly in cities like Mumbai and Bangalore. So, people have been working out of their homes and beds and rooms for so long. So I think mental health and just, overall people's safety was the most low point and has been the most low point for us over the year. And I had not imagined that we would have been spending so much time on that, but we continue to, because it continues to remain the number one challenge.
Thank you. And I think, just to speak on behalf of all the panelists, genuinely humbled by what you've just talked about. Any of the panelists got any kind of, someone mentioned burnout earlier as well, and kind of, when everyone's been under pressure to deliver, and, particularly you cut the cloth and, you still need to deliver what you can in these circumstances. Anyone got any tips or words of wisdom in terms of helping employees not get burnt out and to maintain good, strong mental health?
I think, Zoe, one thing that we saw, and sort of very similar to Aakrit, we have 2/3 of our team is in India, but I think, we all felt like, oh, we might go back to work sort of Q1, then that did not happen. And, we actually opened the office for 2 weeks and then closed it again. And sort of then it became a pseudo medical facility where we were sitting and trying to buy oxygen concentrators. But I think what we then realized was that, well, this is not going away anytime soon. But we still had this issue where everybody was in back-to-back Zoom meetings. Folks were getting stressed out, and we experimented with a bunch of things. Half of them failed. We tried setting up Zoom events, like cooking events and so on and so forth. And I think it was okay, but it grew tiresome because it was yet another Zoom meeting. We tried to do small groups to meet up, but folks were a bit nervous, and it was so taxing for people to think about all the things that they need to do before they meet. So that didn't necessarily work. I think the two things that we've now sort of settled on that are showing some early wins, three things. One, we actually started working with a company called Walking on Earth. And so that had massive turnout. We have 80 to 90 of team members at every session, and it's all about mental wellness and sort of health and how do you look at things. The second was we use a system called TeamFlow, which gives everyone a little avatar that can drive around in a virtual office, and suddenly felt like people felt that they were in a company that had other people and not just text or scheduled meetings. And then the third, which we've just started, is we've done alternate 4 days. And we're still sort of rolling it through the system, where each team will split into half, and every team will do at least 1 4-day week every 2 weeks. And if we think that's really working, we'll extend it further, just to be able to balance out. Because we heard from a lot of our teams, especially with families, that they had kids, they were seeing more of the kids and spending less time with the kids. And that felt like an oxymoron. And I have 2 little ones, and I couldn't agree with them more.
I can relate to that too. Any other tips for helping teams through all this?
I think that I'd love to say that we did as good a job as the other companies. I personally remember working 14 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, and like waking up in the middle of the night, very upset because in terms of what we do, if somebody doesn't understand something, somebody dies or they have life-changing complications. The failure to get traction, I took incredibly personal for a long period of time. And in the end, I think some of my colleagues, because everybody is completely ethically committed to what we're trying to do, which is save lives anywhere on the planet and help health systems which are facing financial ruin, to be honest, in the next few years. We had to start focusing on the positives and just go, right, actually, this is a win. This award's a win. This recognition's a win. This hospital is a win. This system's a win. Because if you took it down the other way, it just became completely overwhelming. So we've tried to do that, but I think I suspect both other companies are doing still a better job than we are. And I've got to look forward to the end of the pandemic.
That's great. We've just got a question. We've got 4 minutes left. I'm just keen that we fit this in. A question for Aakrit mainly, but I'll come on to a different form of that question for Sachin and Richard. So, having built one of the largest AI helplines ever, do you see the adoption of conversational AI taking off across businesses and verticals more generally, and what regions show the most promise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think conversational AI, like I said, it moved from that early adopter to the early majority category. We are definitely seeing large adoption for it across regions, across use cases, across industry verticals. It's definitely becoming a technology that is finally moving from being just a cool little innovative thing to like actually solving problems. To be very specific, I think verticals wherever there is the entire service and transaction is mostly digital or online. So e-commerce businesses, we spoke about fintech, banking, telco to some degree, travel, hospitality, wherever the exchange of goods is mostly digital and online, and now it's pretty much everything. We see that customer service as a use case works really, really well for conversational AI. So you could essentially have either a chat-driven bot or a voice-driven bot that could answer all your basic questions around, how do you handle customer care. And that I think is now low-hanging fruit. You're gonna find those types of solutions deployed across various businesses that you end up interacting with. We also are starting to see some exciting opportunity in what we call conversational commerce. So the ability to basically send a message, chat, and actually purchase goods over an AI interface as well. Still early, I would say initial adoption stages, but we think we have we think it's going to take off over the next year or so as well. So consumer industries, digital touch points, customer care very much happening across the board, across markets, US, UK, Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East. We just signed a customer in Australia. So it's pretty much across the board.
Okay, just need Antarctica and we've got everyone. Thank you. Richard and Sachin, maybe 30 seconds from you both on what you think is going to be big in AI in the next 12 months that we'll be talking about next time. Richard.
After you, Richard.
I can only speak to healthcare, but with something like $750 billion of waste in the healthcare system in the US and 25 to 30% of it generally around the world, we have a real significant challenge on how we can improve patient outcomes and how we can still fund what is becoming an aging population with ever more expensive healthcare treatment. So there'll be some very good new things appearing, I hope, in the next 12 months because we need them.
Understood. Thank you. Sachin.
And for us, it's Zoe, really all about how do we make this easier and more self-serve. So actually, we've been doing a lot of work around conversational AI from a software customer acquisition perspective, but also at the same time as volume continues to grow at the pace it is, and more companies are making that really important step. How do we automate more of the code production? So we've a bunch of teams now that are working on next year's platform. And one of the things that we're looking at is things like code synthesis or partial code synthesis, where we can effectively finish the last mile for an ever increasing amount of customers so that we don't need human intervention.
Brilliant. It's so great to hear a connection between two of the companies that we're talking about here. Thank you all so much, Sachin, Richard and Aakrit. It's been fascinating hearing about what's been happening in the last 12 months. It was exciting at the start of it, and it sounds even more exciting now. So thank you so much. We've heard about going with your gut, the difficulties in getting people's attention at this kind of really busy time, and reminding people about the wins that you're having to help, you know, maintain that morale and that positive sentiment going forward. So thank you all so much, and thanks everyone for listening as well. At this point, I'll hand back over to Bindi.